She was attacked at night, and people just walked by until one brave stranger stepped in and changed everything. This is her story of survival, courage, and justice. Watch till the end, and don't forget to subscribe for more powerful real stories. The wind was thick with the scent of hot pretzels, engine smoke, and wet pavement. It had rained earlier, that kind of sticky, greasy New York rain that didn't clean the city, just made it shine like it was trying too hard. Amina Carter pulled her hoodie tighter around her face, the drawstrings cinched like a noose beneath her chin. She liked the feeling, protection, anonymity, like armor. The hoodie was black, oversized, worn at the sleeves. She'd owned it since high school. It was after 10 p.m. She should have been home. But some nights, she couldn't sit in her studio apartment with the walls pressing in like questions. Tonight, she needed to move, to think, to breathe under the low hum of streetlights. She walked past the corner of Flatbush and Atlantic, just outside the closed bookstore where she worked part-time. The security gate was already down, covered in graffiti. She looked at it and smiled softly. She had alphabetized the entire poetry section that day. No one noticed. No one ever noticed. Except maybe the one guy who always asked for Baldwin. She crossed the street. The avenue was still half awake, bodega lights flickering, yellow cabs gliding by with reflections trailing behind them. Groups of people passed her, talking loud, laughing, half-drunk. Amina kept her head down. She liked blending in, until she noticed she couldn't, because someone wasn't passing her. Someone was behind her, and he hadn't stopped. At first, she told herself she was imagining it. Big city paranoia. She'd watched too many true crime videos. The kind where the narrator always said she knew something wasn't right before the worst part. She crossed to the next block, turned down a quieter street. She could still hear footsteps behind her. Steady, pacing hers. She stopped in front of a deli, pretended to read the sign on the closed door. The man stopped too, just out of the corner of her vision. Heart thudding, she slipped one AirPod out and glanced behind her. Mid-30s maybe. Light jacket. Baseball cap. Head down, pretending to scroll his phone. But no phone light. She walked faster now. There were still people around. She passed a couple arguing about pizza, a teenager riding a city bike, a group of college kids coming out of a hookah lounge. There was comfort in the crowd. This wasn't some deserted alley in a horror film. This was Brooklyn. Safe-ish. Kind of. Maybe. She turned down another block, closer to her apartment now. That's when the footsteps behind her sped up. Her body went rigid. She didn't turn, didn't run, just walked faster. Then, out of nowhere, a sharp, crushing pain exploded at the base of her skull. The world blurred. Her knees buckled. She hit the pavement, a hard cheek first, breath knocked out of her. Amina's ears rang. The city around her kept moving. A yellow cab drove by. Someone's voice in the distance said, "I think the girl fell." Then a door slammed. Footsteps retreated. She was alone. She didn't black out completely. Not at first. Instead, she drifted, between moments of light and dark, between the pulsing ache in her skull and the distant sound of laughter echoing down the block. She opened her eyes. Bright headlights passed. Someone stepped over her. Didn't stop. The world felt like it was underwater. Her limbs wouldn't respond. Her lips moved, but no sound came out. Then she heard it. The sound of footsteps returning. Her heart thundered panic, but it wasn't the man this time. It was a woman. Oh my God. Are you? Hey. Hey. Someone call 911. Amina tried to speak. Couldn't. The woman knelt beside her, rain soaking into the knees of her jeans. You're okay. You're not alone. Just stay with me, all right? Everything went black. The smell of antiseptic was the next thing Amina knew. Then the beep of a monitor. Voices behind a curtain. She has a concussion. Pretty serious one. Likely hit with something heavy. And the cuts. Minor. Just surface abrasions. But she's lucky. Could have been worse. Amina stirred. Her eyes blinked open. Blinding white ceiling. Stiff sheets beneath her. And 4 taped to her hand. She turned her head. Pain shot through her skull like a cracked bell. Nurse, someone said. She's awake. The curtain slid back. A nurse in blue scrubs smiled gently. Hey there, sweetheart. You're safe. You're in Methodist Hospital. Can you tell me your name? Amina swallowed. Amina, she croaked. Amina Carter. Good. That's good. You were attacked last night. You've been here about 6 hours. Do you remember what happened? Amina closed her eyes. Flashes, the footsteps, the blow, the cold concrete. Someone followed me, she whispered. I think he hit me. Do you remember his face? No, she said softly. The nurse nodded sympathetically. The police will be by to speak with you. Try to rest in the meantime. Later, a young officer came in. He asked her a few questions, all routine. What was she wearing? Why was she walking alone? Did she provoke anyone? She gave short answers. He scribbled them down, then said, We'll see what we can find, but these things happen sometimes. Best to avoid certain streets at night, you know? Amina stared at him. These things happen? Like rain? Like subway delays? She didn't say anything, just turned her head to the wall. That night, lying in the hospital bed, she stared at the ceiling and let the tears fall quietly. It wasn't just the pain. It was the feeling of being unseen, of knowing that people had walked past her, stepped over her, like she was a problem on the sidewalk. But someone had stopped. A stranger. She didn't know her name, but she remembered her voice. And in the coldest moment of her life, someone had seen her. And maybe that meant this wasn't the end of her story. Maybe it was the beginning. The hospital room was cold, in that clinical, indifferent way that made everything feel temporary, like people weren't meant to stay long. And maybe that was the point. Amina lay still, staring at the 4 drip beside her bed. Her body ached in slow pulses, especially the back of her head. The nurse said the bleeding had stopped, and there were no skull fractures, but the concussion was serious. The pain wasn't what bothered her the most, though. It was the silence. The officer had left hours ago. He didn't promise anything. Didn't give her much to hold on to, just a tired nod and the vague assurance that they'd look into it. As if her life, her pain, her fear were just an item on a checklist. As if she had asked for this. Amina's phone, retrieved from her hoodie pocket by a nurse, lay on the bedside table. It was cracked but still working. She stared at it for a long time before finally picking it up. 7:52 a.m. 1 missed call from her manager at the bookstore. 3 unread messages from her roommate, Jade. Jade speech balloon. Where are you? You didn't come home. Please tell me you're okay. Folded hands, medium dark skin own. Amina slowly typed back. Amina speech balloon. I'm in the hospital. Someone attacked me. Seconds later, the phone rang. She hesitated before answering. Girl, are you okay? What happened? I was about to call the cops myself. Amina's voice cracked. I don't even know. It all happened so fast. I was walking and someone hit me. Jesus. What hospital? Methodist. I'm coming. Before Amina could protest, Jade had already hung up. 35 minutes later, the curtain slid open, and Jade rushed in, curly hair tied in a puff, wearing oversized sweats and puffy eyes that said she hadn't slept. She didn't speak right away. She just wrapped her arms around Amina and held on tight. Girl, she whispered. You could have died. I know, Amina said, her voice hoarse. When they finally pulled apart, Jade sat in the chair beside the bed. They say anything about who did it? She asked. No. The police didn't seem very interested. Like they were just going through the motions. Jade frowned. Typical. Black girl gets attacked in the street, and it's just another day. I don't even know what he looked like. He was wearing a hat. I didn't think he'd actually do anything. You didn't do anything wrong, Amina. Amina sighed. Then why do I feel like I did? Later that afternoon, a hospital social worker stopped by a middle-aged black woman named Ms. Laverne. She introduced herself gently and explained her role. I'm here to help you figure out next steps, she said, sitting beside the bed. Police reports, support groups, even therapy if you need it. Amina nodded slowly. You've been through trauma, and I know it may not feel like it now, but you're not alone. Okay. I don't feel like me, Amina admitted. I keep thinking about lying there and seeing people walk by. Ms. Laverne's expression softened. We talk a lot about fight or flight, but not enough about freeze. That moment your body just stops. And sometimes the world freezes with it. Amina blinked back tears. I wasn't invisible, she said, but it felt like I was. You're not invisible. Not here. Jade stayed overnight, sleeping in the chair beside Amina. They watched movies on her phone until they both drifted off, the 4 beeping quietly in the background like a lullaby. The next morning, Amina was discharged. She stepped outside and instantly winced at the daylight. Everything felt sharper now, louder. She wrapped her coat tighter and clung to Jade's arm as they waited for the Uber. She hadn't been home since the attack. She wasn't sure she was ready to go back. Over the next few days, Amina moved slowly through recovery. Her head still hurt. Loud noises made her dizzy. Her doctor told her to rest, avoid screens, and limit stress. Which was ironic, because stress now followed her like a shadow. She kept replaying the moment in her head, the steps behind her, the blow, the people walking past. Every night she woke up gasping, as if still on the pavement. Jade encouraged her to talk to someone, but Amina hesitated. She didn't want to be seen as broken. But the truth? She felt broken. Until one morning, while checking her email, she noticed something odd, a message from a name she didn't recognize. Subject: I think I saw what happened. She opened it. Hi. I hope this isn't weird. My name is Jaden. I was walking behind you that night. I saw what happened, but I didn't do anything, and I hate myself for it. I froze. I know that's not enough, but I want to help now. If you want to talk, here's my number. I'm so sorry. Amina stared at the screen. At first, she wanted to delete the message. But something about it, the honesty, the guilt, made her pause. She clicked reply. Amina sat cross-legged on her bed, laptop warm against her thighs. The apartment was quiet. Jade had gone to work, leaving behind a cup of tea and a note that read, "You're stronger than you think." Amina kept rereading it like a prayer. Her head still ached, and her body felt slow, like it hadn't quite returned to itself. But she couldn't stop thinking about the email. I was walking behind you that night. I didn't do anything. I want to help. She reread it 3 times. There was no last name, no social media link, just Jaden and a phone number. She'd hovered over the reply button for almost an hour the night before finally typing one simple line. Hi. What exactly did you see? Now, this morning, there was a reply. You were crossing in front of the corner store on Myrtle. I was a few steps behind. I saw a guy approach from the other side. He had a bat, or something like a bat. I thought it was a prank, or maybe you knew him. I froze. Then you fell, and I panicked. I didn't call anyone. I just left. Amina swallowed. The corner store. She remembered passing it. She remembered hearing laughter inside. She remembered someone stepping out just before the attack. That could have been him. But she hadn't seen the bat. She typed back slowly. Why are you telling me this now? The reply came almost instantly. Because I couldn't sleep. Because when I saw your face online yesterday, I knew I couldn't keep pretending I wasn't part of it, even if I didn't throw the punch. I'm not trying to be a hero. I just want to do what I should have done then. Amina stared at the screen, her heart pulsing like it was unsure whether to trust or recoil. He could be lying. Or worse, messing with her. But something in her gut told her he wasn't. She thought about all the people who had stepped over her, ignored her, pretended she wasn't there. And then this one person, this stranger, had come forward. Too late? Yes. But maybe not too late to matter. Later that afternoon, Jade came home early and found Amina standing by the window, phone in hand. You look like someone who's either about to cry or punch someone, Jade said. Amina turned. The guy who emailed me, he saw the attack. Jade blinked. Wait, what? He says he was there. That he saw the man coming. That he froze. You believe him? I think. Yeah, I do. Jade sat on the couch. So what now? He wants to meet. To talk. Jade's eyes widened. Girl, no. What if he's dangerous? He gave his full name this time. Jaden Watkins. I looked him up. He's real. Works at a tech company in Manhattan. No weird social media. No red flags. That's what every horror podcast starts with, Jade muttered, but then sighed. Okay, if you're doing this, I'm coming too. Or at least I'm watching from nearby with pepper spray. Amina smiled weakly. Deal. They met at a coffee shop in Fort Greene. Public, well-lit, filled with people. Jade sat near the counter, pretending to study, eyes fixed like a hawk. Jaden walked in 5 minutes late. Tall, medium build, early 30s, clean cut with nervous hands. He spotted Amina instantly and approached like he was approaching a ghost. Hi, he said. Amina nodded. Hi. They sat. Silence. Jaden broke it first. I know you probably hate me. I don't know you, Amina said flatly. But I did think about you. Whoever you were. The person who saw me and walked away. I didn't walk. I ran, he admitted. It was cowardly. I know that. I've replayed it in my head 1,000 times. I keep thinking, what if I had shouted? What if I'd stepped in? Amina studied him. You were scared. That doesn't make it okay. No, she said quietly. It doesn't. He nodded, eyes lowering. I want to help now. I know you said the police didn't seem to care. I can be a witness. I can give a statement. Amina hesitated. Then, there was a security camera outside the corner store. If what you're saying is true, you'd be in the footage too. Jaden nodded. I know. I've already called the store. They still have the footage. I told them I was part of a police report. They said they'd hold it. Amina's breath caught. That was more than the actual cops had done. She felt something shift inside her, like someone had finally reached across the silence with an outstretched hand. Not to rescue her, but to walk beside her. That evening, Amina called the officer who had first taken her statement. She told him about Jayden, the witness, the store footage. The officer sounded mildly surprised. Okay, that's something. We'll follow up. But she didn't wait. She and Jayden went to the store together. The clerk, a tired old man with nicotine-stained fingers, handed over the footage on a USB. Amina felt the weight of it in her hand. This wasn't just a file. It was proof. She was no longer just a woman claiming to be attacked. She was seen. That night, Amina couldn't sleep. But for the first time since the hospital, the insomnia wasn't from fear, it was from a quiet, vibrating energy under her skin. Something had shifted. She had someone on her side. She wasn't alone. And she wasn't invisible. Not anymore. The next morning, Amina sat at the precinct with a small paper cup of coffee in her trembling hands. Jayden sat beside her, equally stiff. They waited on a metal bench that squeaked every time someone shifted. Amina kept glancing at the man behind the plexiglass window, the one who had first interviewed her. Officer Daniels. He looked busier this time, or maybe just more willing to listen now that someone else was involved. They'll call us in soon, Jayden said gently. Amina gave him a small nod but said nothing. She wasn't afraid this time. She was angry. And she was ready. The USB drive was now in the hands of the NYPD. When they were finally called into the back room, Officer Daniels seemed almost embarrassed. You should have mentioned the corner store camera, he said. Amina's voice was steady. You should have looked. Jayden didn't speak, but his glare said plenty. The detective reviewing the footage came in 10 minutes later. His name was Ramirez, mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a sharper tone. I watched the clip, he said, placing the USB back on the table. It's not crystal clear, but we got a good angle. You see her walking, then a male subject crossing the street and striking her with an object. Looks like a steel pipe. Amina's throat went dry. You can't see the attacker's face clearly, Ramirez added. Cap pulled low, hoodie up. But he paused and turned to Jayden. You were there. Jayden nodded. I gave my full statement. We're running the footage through enhancement now and checking similar MLS in the area. This wasn't random. Guy knew how to hit and disappear fast. Has anyone else been hurt like this? Amina asked. Ramirez looked at her. 2 women. Last fall. Both at night. Both in Brooklyn. One ended up in the ICU. The room went still. And you think it's the same person? We don't know yet, Ramirez said. But the pattern's enough for us to look harder. That footage helped. And your friend here, he gestured to Jayden, might have just moved this case up the ladder. Amina exhaled slowly. For the first time, it felt like something might actually come of this. But what scared her was the thought that this man might still be out there, waiting. Outside the precinct, the city bustled on. Taxis honked. A street preacher shouted something about fire and forgiveness. But Amina heard none of it. She was locked in her thoughts. Jayden walked beside her, silent. They stopped at a corner. Thank you, she said softly. He looked surprised. You don't need to thank me. I do. You didn't have to come forward. You didn't have to do any of this. I did have to be said. Because I saw what I didn't want to see. And I ran. That's not who I want to be. Amina looked up at him. Really looked. There was still fear in his eyes. But more than that, there was remorse. And something else, conviction. You're brave, she said quietly. Jayden chuckled once, bitterly. Not that night. But now, she said. Now you are. That afternoon, Amina got a call from Detective Ramirez. He sounded alert, like someone who had slept with one eye open. We pulled partial images from the camera feed. Facial recognition gave us 3 possible matches. One stands out, guy with priors for assault, petty theft, and drug charges. Name's Travis Brooks. We're tracking his last known address. Amina's heart stuttered. A name. She didn't know what she'd expected, maybe just vague leads, endless waiting. But now there was a face. A person. Someone real. What happens now? She asked. We find him, Ramirez said. And if he's the guy, you'll be notified. She hung up and sat in silence for a long time. Jayden, who had stayed for coffee in her apartment kitchen, looked over. Is that good news? Yes, she said. It is. But she didn't feel relief. Not yet. Later that night, as she stood brushing her teeth, Amina caught her reflection in the mirror. The bruise on her jaw had turned a yellowish purple. The swelling was down. But the ache inside her chest, the way the world suddenly felt a little sharper, a little colder, hadn't gone anywhere. She stared into her own eyes, trying to find something familiar. Who was she now? Not just the girl with the hoodie. Not just the bookstore clerk. Not just a victim. But someone else. Someone forming. She ran her fingers through her short curls, wiped the steam from the glass, and whispered to her reflection. "You're still here." The next day, Ramirez called again. "We found Travis Brooks," he said. "He was picked up late last night in Queens. Tried to run. He's in custody now." Amina's knees nearly gave out. "Is he the one?" she whispered. "We can't say for certain. Not yet. But we're bringing you in to look at a photo lineup." Her stomach turned. She didn't want to see him, but she had to. Amina sat alone in a narrow hallway inside the precinct, her fingers gripping the edge of a plastic chair. The walls were painted in institutional gray, and the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. The door beside her opened. Detective Ramirez leaned out. "You ready?" he asked. She hesitated, then stood. "No," she said quietly, "but I'm coming anyway." He nodded and motioned for her to follow. The room was colder than she expected. A long mirror ran along one wall, the kind where you knew people were watching from the other side. Amina wrapped her arms around herself and tried to steady her breath. Ramirez explained, "You're going to see 5 men. They've been instructed not to speak. If you recognize the man who assaulted you, let us know after the lineup." Amina nodded, but her throat felt tight. She wasn't sure what scared her more, seeing him again, or not being able to. The door opened. One by one, the men filed in. They stood in a row, hands at their sides, each with a number around their neck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Amina stared. Number 3. Something in the curve of his shoulders, the way his cap sat low over his brow, it made her skin crawl. Her memory flashed like a broken reel. The footsteps, the blow, the ground rushing up. Number 3. She didn't need to see his full face. She knew. Ramirez didn't rush her. When she finally stepped out into the hall, he was waiting. "Did you recognize him?" he asked. "Yes." "Which number?" 3. Ramirez made a note. "Thank you." Amina exhaled. It felt like shedding a stone she'd been carrying in her chest for weeks. Outside, the sky was soft and gray, threatening more rain. Jaden was waiting by the steps of the precinct, pacing. When he saw her, he froze. Amina walked toward him slowly, then nodded once. "They got him." Jaden's face slackened with relief. "Are you okay?" She didn't answer right away. "I'm not sure what I am," she admitted. "But I think this is a start." Later that evening, back at the apartment, Jade hugged her the moment she walked in. "I'm so proud of you," she said. "You actually did it." "It doesn't change what happened," Amina murmured. "No," Jade agreed, "but it changes what happens next." The following days moved in strange rhythms. There were calls from lawyers, meetings with prosecutors, requests for statements, evidence, and timelines. Amina gave everything she had, the medical reports, the messages from Jaden, even her own written account of that night. It was exhausting, but empowering too. She was building a case, not just against the man who hurt her, but against the silence that had followed. Jaden stayed involved the entire time. He came to meetings when she asked. He gave additional testimony. And slowly, Amina began to trust him, not just as a witness, but as a friend. They'd both seen something ugly, and now they were trying to turn it into something true. One morning, Amina stood in front of the mirror again. The bruise was nearly gone now. Only a faint yellowing shadow remained, like a scar that had almost given up. She touched her jaw gently, then turned away. She had an interview at the bookstore. The manager wanted to know if she was ready to return. She wasn't sure, but she was going anyway. Step by step, she was re-entering the world. And this time, on her terms. 3 weeks later, she got a call. The DA's office had officially filed charges: aggravated assault with intent, possession of a weapon, and attempted battery. There would be a trial. Ramirez explained everything in calm, procedural tones, but Amina's heart pounded through the call. She hung up and stared out the window for a long time. Justice was slow, messy, uncertain, but for the first time, she believed it was possible. That weekend, she met Jaden at a cafe not far from Prospect Park. It had become their spot, quiet, with big windows and warm pastries. They sat by the window, sipping coffee. Outside, the trees were just beginning to blossom. "Trial date's set," she told him. He nodded. "You nervous?" "Terrified." He leaned forward. You don't have to go through it alone. Amina looked at him. You keep showing up, she said. Jaden shrugged, trying to play it cool, but his voice was soft. That's what people should do. She smiled. It wasn't the beginning of some romance. Not right now. Maybe not ever. But it was the beginning of trust. And that was enough. That night, Amina sat down with her journal for the first time since the hospital. The pages were blank, crisp, and white. She wrote, I thought no one saw me, but someone did. I thought no one would care, but someone did. I thought I wouldn't heal, but I'm starting to. She closed the journal gently. Not the end, but a new chapter. The courthouse smelled like cold marble and nerves. Amina stood at the entrance with her hands clenched around her purse strap. The hallway buzzed with quiet conversations, shuffling papers, and the occasional sharp click of a lawyer's shoes on tile. She had chosen a simple outfit, black slacks and a dark blue blouse. No makeup, except a little concealer under her tired eyes. Jade had offered to do her hair, but Amina had kept it natural, coiled tight around her face like armor. Jaden stood a few feet away, dressed in a blazer, his hands shoved awkwardly into his pockets. He gave her a small, reassuring smile. You ready? He asked. No, she said honestly. But I'm here. That's enough. Inside the courtroom, everything looked bigger than life. The wooden benches, the judge's seat, the dull shine of the flag in the corner. Amina sat stiffly behind the prosecutor, clutching a bottle of water she'd barely sipped. She didn't look at the defendant's table. Couldn't. But she felt him there. Travis Brooks, the man who had struck her in the dark. She could hear him shift in his chair, cough quietly. His lawyer whispered something to him. Amina's stomach twisted. She wasn't sure what she expected him to look like in daylight. Less dangerous? More remorseful? But he looked like nothing. Just a man. Just someone. And maybe that was what scared her most. The trial began with formalities, names, charges, procedural statements. Then came the evidence. The footage from the corner store was shown on a large monitor. Amina watched herself walk across the screen, hoodie up, hands in her pockets, unaware of what was coming. Then the man, his figure crossing behind her, fast. And the blow. She winced, just like she had the first time. The courtroom was silent. The judge leaned forward slightly. The defense lawyer objected to interpretation of intent, but the prosecutor pressed on, explaining what had happened, describing the similarities to past attacks in the area. Jaden was called next. He walked slowly to the stand, cleared his throat, and answered each question with steady conviction. I saw the man approach her from behind. He was carrying something metallic. Did you see him strike her? Yes. Did you assist her? Jaden hesitated, then answered, No. I was afraid. I left. I regretted it the moment I did. And why did you come forward later? Because I couldn't keep pretending it didn't happen. His words rang through the courtroom like a bell. Amina felt something in her chest crack open, not pain this time, but a strange, quiet relief. Finally, it was her turn. The bailiff called her name. She walked to the stand, her heart thudding with each step. She raised her right hand, swore to tell the truth, then sat. The prosecutor's voice was gentle, careful. Can you tell the court what happened that night? Amina nodded. Her voice was soft, but clear. I was walking home. I just left a friend's apartment. I took a shortcut past the corner store. I noticed someone behind me, but I thought it was just a pedestrian. She paused. Then I felt the blow. Everything went dark. I remember hitting the ground. People passed by. No one stopped. I don't remember much after that until I woke up in the hospital. The defense attorney leaned forward, his tone sharper. Miss Taylor, can you say with absolute certainty that the man in this courtroom is the one who attacked you? Amina stared at Travis for the first time. His eyes met hers. Cold. Indifferent. She didn't flinch. I didn't see his full face that night, but I recognized his build, his movements. And after watching the footage, yes, I believe it was him. The defense attorney tried to shake her, pointing out how dark the street was, how fast it happened. But Amina didn't waver. Her voice never cracked. Because this time, she had one. After her testimony, she stepped off the stand and returned to her seat beside Jade, whose eyes brimmed with silent pride. The judge recessed for the day. Back in the hallway, Amina felt her knees wobble. Jaden handed her a bottle of water. You were incredible, he said. I'm shaking, she whispered. But you stood. You spoke. That matters. She leaned against the wall, letting herself breathe again. Even if they don't convict him, she said quietly, I said what needed to be said. Jaden nodded. And you said it with power. That night, Amina sat on her balcony with Jade. They watched the city lights shimmer in the distance, the dull hum of cars rising like music. You think he'll go to prison? Amina asked. I hope so, Jade said. But even if he doesn't, people saw you. They believed you. You changed something. Amina wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. I feel different, she said. Yeah, like I finally told my story. And it's mine, not his. Jade squeezed her hand. And there's more story ahead, she said. Don't let him be the last page. It had been 3 days since Amina testified. 3 long, sleepless, surreal days. The courtroom was quiet now. Testimonies were over. Evidence had been presented. The attorneys had made their closing arguments, the prosecution laying out the timeline, the video, the pattern of attacks. The defense leaning on lack of positive ID, questioning witness reliability, and pointing to the absence of physical evidence directly tying Travis Brooks to the weapon. Now the decision was no longer in her hands. It belonged to the jury. Amina sat in her apartment, curled on the couch with a blanket over her legs, flipping a mug of tea in her hand she hadn't taken a sip of in 20 minutes. Her phone was on the coffee table, face up, silent. Every time it buzzed, her stomach jumped. Jade paced nearby, scrolling through her own phone. Jaden had texted that morning. Thinking of you. Call if you need to talk. Amina hadn't replied yet. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know what to say. What could she say, really? That she felt like she was still lying on the sidewalk, waiting for someone to look down and care? That she wasn't sure if justice was real or just a performance? Jade stopped and looked over. You okay? Amina gave her a tired smile. I'm surviving. Later that afternoon, the call finally came. Detective Ramirez. Jury's reached a verdict, he said. It'll be read at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Amina froze. Already? She asked. They didn't need much time, he said. That can be a good thing. Or not. But you should be there. I will be. That night, she didn't sleep. She lay in bed watching the shadows move across her ceiling. Every possible outcome played through her head. Guilty. Not guilty. A mistrial. Appeals. Years. She imagined seeing Travis Brooks walk free, flashing that same disinterested look as he passed her. She imagined what it would feel like if the judge said guilty, and if he finally looked at her, not with arrogance, but with understanding of what he'd done. But she couldn't imagine peace. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Morning came gray and drizzling. Amina pulled on a black turtleneck and jeans, tied her hair back, and took the subway to the courthouse. Jaden met her at the steps, wearing the same blazer as before. They didn't say much. Just a nod. A silent understanding. Inside, the benches filled quickly. Journalists were present this time. A few neighborhood advocates. A couple of people from the women's shelter she had volunteered with once. The judge entered. The room stood. The jury filed in. 12 faces. Calm. Measured. Amina couldn't read them. The forewoman handed a slip of paper to the bailiff, who passed it to the judge. He read silently, nodded, and looked up. In the case of the state of New York versus Travis Brooks, the judge said, his voice steady, on the charge of aggravated assault with intent. How does the jury find? A pause. The forewoman stood. Guilty. A wave of sound passed through the courtroom. Someone behind Amina let out a breath. Jaden gripped her arm without realizing it. The judge continued. On the charge of possession of a deadly weapon. Guilty. On the charge of attempted battery. Guilty. 3 words, spoken 3 times. Each one cracked something loose inside her. She closed her eyes. She didn't cry, but something in her finally let go. Later, outside the courthouse, the reporters came. They wanted her statement. Microphones. Cameras. Flashing lights. But she held up a hand and shook her head. I don't have a statement, she said. I just have a name. And I got to say it in court. Jaden helped her push past the crowd. Once they were down the steps and out of the way, she stopped and looked at him. I thought it wouldn't matter, she said. Even if you went to prison, I thought I'd still feel broken. Do you? Amina tilted her head, listening to the city sounds, car horns, footsteps, someone shouting about umbrellas on the corner. No, she said. I don't. He smiled. Good. Later that evening, she went to her favorite bookstore, the one she had stopped going to since the attack. The manager, a quiet woman named Rosa, greeted her with open arms. We saved your name tag, Rosa said, smiling. Didn't think we'd have to, but we hoped. Amina walked through the shelves slowly, running her fingers along the spines. The quiet comfort of books wrapped around her like a familiar blanket. She picked one and settled into a chair by the window. Outside, The clouds were breaking. A sliver of sunlight pushed through. For the first time in weeks, she let herself relax. Not because the story was over, but because she had taken it back. A week after the verdict, Amina returned to the sidewalk. That sidewalk. The one where it had happened. She stood on the corner near the bodega where the security footage had come from, her arms crossed in front of her as the city flowed around her, people with shopping bags, a man yelling into his phone, someone laughing from a passing car. No one noticed her. And for once, that felt okay. Jade had offered to come with her, but Amina said no. She needed to face this place alone, not as a victim, but as someone who had come through it. She walked slowly down the block, her footsteps echoing off the concrete. She could almost hear the sound of that night, the steady rhythm of boots behind her, the silence before the blow. But it was different now. Now she knew how the story ended. She reached the alley where she had fallen, where strangers had stepped around her like she was trash on the ground. For a moment, the world narrowed. But then her phone buzzed, a message from Jaden. Thinking about you today. Proud of you. Don't forget that. She smiled. The echo of fear dimmed. The bookstore took her back officially. Rosa gave her a few days of quiet shelving work in the back, just to help her ease in. And Amina found comfort in the routine, the feel of books, the soft hum of customers, the peace of knowing where everything belonged. She found herself recommending more titles to women who looked lost. Memoirs, essays, soft fiction about strength and healing. People listened to her voice again, this time not in a courtroom, but in the quiet joy of books. She wrote in her journal every night, not about pain, but about possibility, and eventually, about hope. One day, an email arrived from a local advocacy group. They had heard about her case. They were putting together a panel for survivors of street violence to speak at a youth center uptown. Would she be willing to tell her story? She stared at the message for a long time. She wasn't a public speaker. She wasn't a celebrity. She didn't want to be the girl who was attacked. But maybe that wasn't what this was about. Maybe it was about showing someone else that silence could be broken. She wrote back, "Yes, I'll come." The event was in a modest gymnasium with plastic chairs and a makeshift stage. A few dozen teenagers, some parents, some counselors. A few other speakers, a woman who had been stalked, a man who had survived a hate crime. Amina sat at the end of the row, waiting for her turn. Her palms were sweating. Her heart wouldn't slow down. When the host called her name, she stood and walked to the mic. No notes, no script, just her truth. "I'm not here to give you advice," she began. "I'm here because I once thought no one would believe me. That what happened to me didn't matter, because I didn't matter." She paused. A few people leaned forward. "But I was wrong. What happened mattered. I mattered. And if something happens to you, if you're hurt, or scared, or made to feel small, I want you to remember that." Silence. Then slow applause. Nods. One girl wiped at her eyes. Amina stepped down and walked back to her seat. She felt taller than she had in weeks. After the event, a boy no older than 14 came up to her. "My sister, she went through something," he said, barely above a whisper. "She don't talk about it. But I'm gonna tell her what you said." Amina reached out and squeezed his hand. "Tell her she's not alone," she said. Outside, Jaden was waiting with a paper cup of tea. "You were amazing," he said. She laughed softly. "I was terrified." He handed her the tea. "Still did it anyway. That's bravery." They walked slowly together toward the subway. "You think about what's next?" he asked. "Sometimes," she admitted. "I don't know exactly. But I want to help people. I want this to mean something." He smiled. "Sounds like it already does." That night, she stood by her window, looking at the city glittering like a broken constellation. So much had happened. So much pain. But also, growth. Power. Connection. She wasn't the girl who fell. She was the woman who stood back up. Spring came late that year. But when it did, it arrived suddenly, as if the city had remembered how to breathe. Buds broke open on trees. The wind was warmer. People started smiling again. So did Amina. Not all the time, but enough to feel it. She started volunteering part-time with the same advocacy group that invited her to speak, helping young survivors, answering hotline messages, organizing safe meetups for women who were too afraid to leave home alone. Some days, it was heavy. The stories, the silence, the long pauses between words from voices that shook. But Amina had learned how to hold pain without breaking under it. Not because she was stronger than others, but because she had once needed someone to hold her pain too. And now she could be that someone. One afternoon, she walked into a cafe near the courthouse. She hadn't meant to go that way, but her feet took her there, like they remembered something she didn't. She ordered a tea and took a seat by the window, flipping open a book from her tote. After a few minutes, a familiar voice startled her. "Didn't expect to see you here." Jaden. He looked better. Lighter, somehow. Less guilt behind his eyes. "Hey," she said, smiling. "Sit." He did. They sipped quietly for a few minutes. Then he looked at her and said, "I left New York for a while after the trial. Just needed to reset. But I came back. Got a job teaching middle school English." "That's amazing," she said. "Kids need good people." "They need people like you," he replied. "What are you up to?" She shrugged. "Still healing. Still helping others do the same." He smiled. "You ever think about writing a book?" She laughed. "Me? Yeah. You've got a voice. A story. It could help people." She paused, stirred her tea. Maybe one day, she thought. Maybe. That night, back in her apartment, Amina lit a candle and sat down at her desk. She opened her laptop and started typing. Not the whole story. Not yet. But the beginning. Just the words. "This is not a story about what was taken from me. It's a story about what I reclaimed." And then she wrote for hours. Weeks passed. Her life started to feel normal again. A new normal. She read more. Slept better. Even started jogging in the mornings. The fear didn't vanish, but it no longer ruled her. She saw a flyer one day at the bookstore. Self-defense for women. Free intro class. She went. She wasn't great at first, slow reflexes, too gentle. But the instructor smiled and said, "You're stronger than you think." And every week, she got better. Not because she wanted revenge, but because she deserved to feel safe. One morning, she got a letter in the mail. The handwriting was neat and unfamiliar. Inside was a single page. No return address. "Miss Taylor, I watched the trial. I watched the news. I just wanted to say thank you. I'm not ready to speak about what happened to me. But because of you, I'm closer. You showed me it's possible to be heard. You gave me courage I didn't think I had. From someone you saved without ever knowing." Amina held the letter against her chest and cried. Not because it hurt, but because it healed. That weekend, she hosted a small dinner at her apartment. Just a few close friends, Jade, Rosa from the bookstore, 2 women from the advocacy group. They laughed, ate too much, drank sparkling cider, and argued about the best 90s R&B albums. At one point, Jade raised a glass and said, "To Amina for reminding us that even broken things can grow back stronger." And Amina, cheeks warm, heart full, lifted her own glass and said, "To all of us. Survivors. Builders. Voices." Later that night, when everyone had gone, she sat alone on the balcony, city lights blinking below her. She thought of the girl she used to be walking home in the dark, thinking she was invisible. And she thought of the woman she had become who could sit here now, unafraid, unashamed. A woman who had walked through hell and come out whole. And still growing. Spring had fully blossomed into summer. The city was alive with color and noise, street vendors shouting, children playing in parks, the hum of life everywhere. Amina stood on the rooftop of her building, the warm breeze brushing her face, the skyline stretching endlessly before her. She felt free. Not because everything was perfect, not because the past was forgotten, but because she had taken control of her story. The past months had changed her in ways she hadn't imagined. Her blog had grown, thousands of readers now followed her journey, writing to thank her for sharing her truth. The advocacy group had asked her to help develop a new program for young women at risk. Jaden had become a close friend, someone she could count on without judgment. She was no longer just a survivor. She was a leader. One evening, after a panel discussion about violence prevention, Amina walked home under the stars with Jade by her side. They talked about everything and nothing: dreams, fears, hopes. "I'm scared," Amina admitted. "That someday, I might forget how far I've come. That the pain might sneak back." Jade squeezed her hand. "You're stronger than you know. And you're never alone." At home, Amina opened a small box she'd kept hidden for years, a collection of letters, photographs, mementos from before the attack. She pulled out a photo of herself smiling, carefree, and tucked it into her journal. "This is me," she whispered. "And this is me now." She wrote a final line in her draft. "I am not my fear. I am my strength." Weeks later, her first book was published. A memoir, raw, honest, and unapologetic. In a packed bookstore, surrounded by friends, supporters, and strangers who had become allies, Amina read aloud a passage. "There was a night when the world turned dark. But even in darkness, light finds a way. It lives in the small acts, the hand that reaches out, the voice that refuses to be silenced, the courage to stand again. The applause was thunderous. Tears ran down her cheeks. She had reclaimed her life. Months turned into years. Amina traveled to schools, shelters, and community centers, sharing her message. She helped establish a foundation to support survivors, raise awareness, and fight systemic injustice. Her voice, once trembling, was now steady and strong. One day, as she walked through a park, she saw a young girl sitting alone on a bench, tears streaking her cheeks. Amina approached gently. "Hey," she said softly. "Do you want to talk?" The girl looked up, surprised. Amina smiled. "I've been where you are. And I'm here." The girl nodded. And for the first time, she let someone in. Amina knew the journey wasn't over. There would be hard days. There would be setbacks. But she was ready. Because now, she wasn't just surviving. She was living.